I woke up in a hospital room, the fluorescent lights flickering above me. My body felt like it had been run over by a truck, and all I wanted was to hold my baby. I tried to sit up, but the dizziness hit me like a wave. The nurse was there, standing quietly at my bedside, watching me with a strange look in her eyes. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. I looked around frantically. Where's my baby? The words barely left my lips before the nurse replied, "Your baby is safe." It was the way she said it. There was something in her tone, something I couldn't put my finger on. Why wasn't she handing me my daughter? Why wasn't anyone talking about my baby? I could barely remember what happened. I knew I'd been in labor for hours. I remembered the pain, the exhaustion, but everything after that was blurry. I tried to focus. What happened? Where's Lila? The nurse tried to reassure me, but her words weren't comforting. They were evasive. It's all taken care of. Everything is fine. But I didn't feel fine. I felt terrified. I needed answers. I insisted on seeing my baby, but instead of the nurse, my parents appeared at the door. Their faces were tired, like they hadn't slept in days, but there was something more. Something hidden behind their eyes. They didn't seem concerned. Why weren't they rushing to reassure me? "Where's my baby?" I asked again, my voice a little sharper this time. My mom hesitated, exchanging a look with my dad. They both came over to the bed. "Maya," my mom said softly, "it's going to be okay." But that wasn't what I wanted to hear. I wanted to know where my baby was. When my parents finally told me the truth, I was in shock. My sister, Esther, had made a decision on her own while I was unconscious. Without telling me, without even consulting me. And what's worse, my parents supported her. My heart sank. I couldn't breathe. She gave away my baby. Why? How could they let her do that? Why didn't anyone tell me? I felt numb, betrayed, lost. And when my parents said it was for the best, I had no idea what that even meant, but I was about to find out. And let me tell you, when I did, everything changed. I couldn't even process what my parents were saying. I had just woken up and they were dropping a bombshell on me. Esther, my perfect older sister, had taken it upon herself to make a decision that I wasn't even allowed to be a part of. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. My relationship with Esther had always been complicated. She was always the one who excelled, the one who was the golden child, the one who made the right choices, while I was the one who always felt like I was falling short. And I had accepted it for the most part. Esther was always the one my parents would turn to for advice, the one they'd trust with anything. But this was beyond anything I could have ever imagined. I tried to think back to the pregnancy, to the months before all of this happened. I had a hard time dealing with the changes in my body, the overwhelming emotions, the exhaustion. And while I thought I had the support of my family, especially Esther, something always felt off. Esther had been involved in a way that felt too controlling. She'd constantly be at my side, telling me how to manage the pregnancy, what decisions I should make, and when to follow the doctor's advice. At first, I thought she was just trying to help. After all, she was the responsible one, the one with everything figured out. But now, in the wake of this, I couldn't help but wonder, had I been blind to the fact that she was taking over my life? My mom kept repeating that it was for the best, but I could tell something was being hidden. There was this strange tension in the air, like my parents were caught between supporting me and supporting Esther. My dad's silence was deafening. I pressed them again. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you trust me with the decision about my baby?" And that's when my mom finally spoke up. She told me that Esther had made the decision to give my baby to another family. They were better suited to raise her, she said. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight. This wasn't their decision to make. But my parents? They just stood there, telling me it was for the best, telling me that they were doing what they thought was right for the baby. And then it hit me. They never considered what I wanted. The cold, hard truth? I had no say, and somehow they were convinced that taking Lila away from me was the best choice they could have made. The rage that had been simmering inside me was boiling over. How could Esther, my own sister, make this choice for me? And how could my parents just stand by and support her? Every word that came out of their mouths made my blood boil. They were trying to convince me that what they did was for my baby's best interests, but all I could hear was the hollow echo of betrayal. I demanded more answers, but my parents only gave me vague explanations, ones that only fueled the fire inside me. It was just the right thing to do, my mom kept repeating, but there was nothing right about it. I tried calling Esther, but she wouldn't answer. Of course she wouldn't. She already knew I was furious. I couldn't sit there any longer listening to my parents justify her actions. I needed to find her, to confront her, to understand why she thought it was her place to make that decision for me. My mind was racing. I needed to know where my baby was, where Lila was. My parents had given me an address, the family who had taken her in, but it felt like a cruel joke. I couldn't believe they were treating me like I was the one who was in the wrong. But then came the crushing realization. They weren't just trying to make me feel better. They believed they were doing the right thing. It wasn't about me or my wishes at all. It was about what they thought was best for Lila, and it felt like they had decided that I wasn't enough. I grabbed my purse, feeling the weight of the decision I was about to make. I was going to see the family. I had to. The idea of someone else holding my daughter, my flesh and blood, was unbearable. The thought of being kept away from her, of having to fight for her when she was only hours old, made my stomach twist. I drove to the address my parents had given me. The drive felt endless, my heart pounding in my chest with every mile. I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. The closer I got, the more the reality set in. What was I going to find when I got there? I parked in front of a nice, quiet suburban house, the kind that made it look like everything was perfect. And maybe it was. For them? But for me, it felt like a nightmare come true. My heart was pounding as I stood in front of the house, my breath coming in shallow bursts. This wasn't supposed to be my reality. This wasn't supposed to happen. I had to find my daughter, my baby, and bring her home. There was no way I was going to leave without her. I took a deep breath and walked up the front steps, my hands trembling as I rang the doorbell. The seconds stretched into what felt like hours before the door finally opened. A middle-aged couple stood there, looking at me with polite, yet confused, smiles. They seemed kind, warm even, but none of that mattered. They had my baby and I wanted her back. Before I could even speak, the woman introduced herself. "Hi, I'm Karen. You must be Maya, right?" She smiled kindly, but I could see the hesitation in her eyes. She knew exactly why I was here. I forced a smile back, trying to stay composed. "Yes, I'm Maya. I came to see my daughter." At the mention of Lila, Karen's smile faltered. Her husband, David, stepped forward, his hands clasped together nervously. "Maya, we understand this is a difficult situation, but please, know that Lila is well taken care of here. She's safe, and she's loved. We want what's best for her, too." What was I supposed to say to that? How could they just stand there and talk about my baby like I wasn't even a part of the conversation? And this was my daughter they were talking about, my flesh and blood, and they had no right to take her. "I need to see her," I said, my voice shaking. "I need to hold my daughter. She's mine. I gave birth to her. I am her mother." The words came out in a rush, like a dam finally breaking. There was a long silence, the kind that felt like it stretched into forever. Karen and David exchanged a look before Karen spoke again, her voice softer now. "We understand how you feel, Maya, but Esther made it very clear that she wanted us to adopt Lila. She was..." That's when I heard the sound of a baby crying from inside the house. It was Lila's cry. My heart leaped in my chest, but I quickly wiped away the tear that formed in my eye. No, I wouldn't break down. Not yet. I pushed forward. "I need to see her, now." But before I could step inside, and the door slammed shut in my face. The door was slammed shut in my face, and for a moment I just stood there in shock. My hands were shaking, my chest heaving with emotion. How had it come to this? How had my family, the people who were supposed to protect me, made a decision this huge without even giving me a voice? I couldn't let it end like this. I wasn't going to walk away without my daughter. I turned around, pacing back and forth, feeling a surge of anger mixed with desperation. I knew I had to do something, and fast. The longer I waited, the more I felt like I was losing her, and that thought terrified me. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. The panic in my voice was obvious, but there was no time to be polite or formal. I needed to fight for Lila. I couldn't let them take her away from me, no matter how perfect their life seemed, no matter how much they said she was better off with them. I started the process to get my daughter back, but it wasn't easy. The court battles dragged on, each day feeling like an eternity. My parents and Esther backed the adoption, claiming it was in Lila's best interest. My sister insisted that she had only done what was necessary, that I wasn't capable of raising a child. The legal system moved slowly, but I was determined. I wasn't going to stop. Months passed, and every day was a struggle. But then, one afternoon, I received a call that changed everything. The court had ruled in my favor. Lila was coming home. I couldn't contain my tears of relief. Finally, my daughter was coming home to where she belonged. With me. The joy was overwhelming, but it was mixed with a deep sadness. The betrayal from my family was still fresh, still raw. I had fought so hard, and yet it felt like I had lost them in the process. The damage to my relationship with Esther and my parents was permanent. They couldn't understand why I was so upset. They believed they had acted in Lila's best interests, and maybe, to them, they had. But to me, they had taken something precious from me, something I could never get back. I stood in the living room of my apartment, holding Lila in my arms for the first time in months. She was finally home. And even though I had her back, I knew my life would never be the same.